Right, welcome back to the Premier League predictions. It's been a very interesting week in the Premier League. Some good results. I actually got a prediction right. I know that never happens nowadays. That's very, very interesting. But I think it's probably the easiest match to predict, if I'm honest. Yeah, I got a couple of results right, but the scorelines were wrong yet again. We're going to start with Monday's clash, and that was Brentford versus Liverpool. And I predicted 2-1 to Liverpool. It's actually 3-1 to Brentford. Liverpool got dominated by Brentford despite having the lion's share of possession. Even without Tony, Brentford were able to score goals, so that bodes well for them in the future. Darwin Núñez, he got a goal disallowed for offside, and it just didn't seem like Liverpool could really get into the game. Like, they had a lot of the ball, but they just could not score. Then moving on to Tuesday's clashes, we've got Arsenal versus Newcastle. I predicted 2-1 to Arsenal, but it was actually 0-0 draw. The top of the table clash that didn't really change anything. Arsenal were the better team and should have had a penalty, but Newcastle defended well and Pope made some amazing saves to keep Newcastle in the match. But yeah, the officiating was a bit shocking for this clash. And then move on to Everton versus Brighton Hove Albion. I predicted 3-1 to Brighton. It was actually 4-1. And it was another Brighton domination job, scoring 3 goals in 6 minutes. Yeah, that really put the game to bed. Everton scored a consolation goal right at the death, but it was not enough for Everton to secure any points. Brighton is on a rampage at the moment. And then move on to Leicester versus Fulham. I predicted 2-1 to Fulham, but it was actually 1-0. Leicester gave their all in an attempt to beat Fulham, but fell to their third successive loss. It was an early Mitrovic goal which sealed all 3 points for the West Londoners, but that wasn't for Leicester trying to equalise. They just couldn't manage it. And then move on to Manchester United versus Bournemouth. I predicted 3-0. And it was 3-0. A high-flying Manchester United side continued their brilliant run with a very assured win over Bournemouth. Bournemouth couldn't really get into the groove at Old Trafford and were completely shut out by United. United have become a very, very dangerous squad, and it's a shame for Bournemouth because they had a really bright start to the season, I feel. Then move on to the Wednesday clashes, and we start off with Southampton versus Nottingham Forest. I predicted 2-1 to Forest. It was actually 1-0. And what a victory it was. Forest lift themselves out of the relegation zone with a shaky but deserved victory over the Saints. Neither side looked great, but Forest were good enough to earn a hard-fought point, and they really deserved the win over Southampton. Scarpa came on for Forest as his debut, and he looked absolutely brilliant. I can't wait to see him cook in the league. And move on to Leeds versus West Ham United. I predicted 2-0 to Leeds. It's actually a 2-2 draw, and this was a very exciting match that either side could have won. Leeds' talent Gnonto, I believe his name is, scored his first goal for Leeds with a brilliant finish, but that was wiped out by a Paqueta and Scamacca goals. Rodrigo managed to share the points in the 70th minute, but there was every chance for either team to win it. They just could not finish to gain all 3 points. Then move on to Aston Villa versus Wolverhampton Wanderers. I predicted 2-0 to Villa. It was actually a 1-0 draw. The new managers share points in their first meeting in the league. It looked like Wolves were going to take all 3 points, but Mings and Ings combined to ensure that the points were shared in the Midlands, keeping Wolves in the relegation zone. Then move on to Crystal Palace versus Tottenham Hotspur. I predicted a 1-0 draw, but it was actually 4-0 to Spurs. After a shock loss to Villa, Spurs fought back to absolutely smash Crystal Palace in their own backyard. Kane netted a brace before goals from Doherty and Son finished off Palace, giving Spurs a real boost in their quest for top 4. And finally, the Thursday night clash between Chelsea and Man City. I predicted 3-1 to Man City. It was actually just 1-0. Another L for Potter's Chelsea, as it was Mahrez who finished off the Blues. Chelsea put up a good display, but just could not find the back of the net. Now there is the Chelsea-Fulham clash as I'm recording this, the coming Thursday. However, I don't have time to watch that match, react to that match, and record my predictions for next week. So I will touch on that in next week's Game Week predictions. But for now, let's jump into the Game Week 20 Premier League predictions. So we're going to start off with the Friday night clash between Aston Villa and Leeds United. Villa and Leeds are sitting in very similar places in the table and are currently clear of the relegation zone, and both sides will be looking for that to continue. Both sides are also looking pretty good in their recent form, so it should be a very good clash between the two, as they are pretty evenly matched at the moment, I feel. And I'm sure they'll both bring some talent in this transfer window. I think Leeds have already secured a player, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure about Villa personally. Honestly, I can see both teams sharing a point here. I'm going to say 1-0. Villa under Emery have looked stronger than they did under Gerrard, despite results not exactly going their way for the most part. But it is a very visible improvement. If you just watch how they play quite a lot better. Leeds under Marsh has been very polarising for Leeds fans. but he's a passionate manager who will turn around Leeds results. He just needs a bit more time, bring in the players he wants. As it stands, both teams are playing at a very similar level of football at the moment, and it'll be a big mid-table clash for both sides. And then move on to the Saturday's clashes, and we start with Manchester United versus Manchester City. The second Manchester derby is here, and it sees a resurgent Man United host Man City in one of their biggest challenges this side of the World Cup. United have been on a great run against very inferior sides, so this will be a first real test for them since the Premier League resumed. It'll be a really interesting clash, as when City hosted United earlier in the season, they put 6 past them. United did grab 3 goals back, but yeah, they were 6-0 down for quite a bit of the match. This City side are very good, we know this, and it'll be a very, very difficult match for Manchester United, as not much teams can break down this Man City side. I'm going to say 3-2 to Manchester City. I still think that Man City will beat United in this clash, but it will be a very close one. Ten Hag has got United playing his way and playing some really good football, but as I said, City are a great side, and I think they're able to weather the storm and get a win at Old Trafford. It's really going to be a good clash to watch, and will really showcase how United can do this season. It's very exciting to see a City and United side that are going to be competing at similar levels again, because it's been quite one-sided for quite a bit of time, so it'll be fun to see them both on sort of like even footing. And then move on to Wolverhampton Wanderers versus West Ham United. Now this is a tasty bottom half clash, with Wolves wallowing in the relegation zone and West Ham teetering just above. Both teams need a win here to help steer their season back on track, but neither team look up for it. Wolves under Lopetegui have looked a lot better, but they're still struggling to score goals and see out matches. Their scoring has improved in recent matches though, to be fair, but they still need to do more to ensure their survival. West Ham have also hit a goal scoring dip recently, but they've scored more than Wolves this season, and with some of their goal scorers back from injury, it's looking a lot better for the Hammers, and Moyes by extension. I'm going to say 1-1 though. I can't really see either side winning this match, and again, it won't be easy for either side. I do think each side's goal scoring woes will affect them, and it will affect their ability to kill off this match. Bottom of the table clashes like this are often very tight affairs, but they're both struggling, so yeah, it could be a very, very tough match for both sides. Then move on to Nottingham Forest versus Leicester City. Another derby this week, as the East Midlands Derby returns to Nottingham. This will be a tasty clash, as both sides who previously met were in the relegation zone and now are sitting around the mid-table. Both sides have been looking better than when they last met, and it'll be a very tasty clash on Trent's side. Both sides have been hamstrung by injuries, but Forest will definitely be hoping that Maddison is still sidelined for the clash. Forest have generally been really good at home this season, and it's been the scene for some brilliant moments. Leicester's season after the break hasn't got off to the best start, so they will be looking to turn it round, and they need to do it quickly if they want to save their season. I'm going to say 2-1 to Forest though. There is no doubt a biased prediction from me, but I do think that Forest will get their revenge for the 4-0 drumming they faced in October. Both teams will be up for this clash, there's no doubt about it, but the City ground should be the deciding factor, and will push Forest over the line to claim all 3 points. Leicester do have a wealth of goal scorers amongst them, so there's no doubt they will score a goal, but Forest will fight to the end to claim all 3 points. Yeah, as I said, Maddison still injured. I'm not sure if he'll be back for the Forest game. I'm hoping he's not, and there's every chance that he won't be. And if he's not, we've got a better chance of winning than if he's there. But even if he does return, I still think Forest can clinch this match. And then move on to Brighton and Hove Albion versus Liverpool. Now this clash has already caused scenes last season, as we saw Trossard rip up Liverpool at Anfield as De Zerbi announced himself to the Premier League. Only a point separate the two sides currently, with Brighton having a brilliant campaign, while Liverpool's isn't exactly going to plan. Brighton have been playing some great football since the Prem returned, and they can't seem to stop scoring. It's actually crazy. They've been quite lucky with injuries too, as only Trossard and Moda are currently out, whereas Liverpool are currently missing a host of important players. Their side is still full of quality, but so is this Brighton side. I'm going to say 3-1 to Brighton. I'm backing Brighton in this clash. As I said, Liverpool are missing some very important players, and away at the Amex, they're definitely going to feel it. I also mentioned that Brighton were in brilliant goal scoring form at the moment, and Liverpool have kind of been a bit shaky defensively, even in the cup match. Now I know the cup doesn't really have any bearing on how the Premier League plays out, but yeah, they looked a bit shaky against Wolves. So yeah, it's going to give Liverpool a lot of problems. It's not going to be easy for Klopp's men, even with the absence of Trossard, but Brighton have a lot of goal scorers in their ranks, as we've seen recently. They're in for a tough time. And then move on to Everton versus Southampton, and this is another relegation scrap this week, as it sees bottom of the league Southampton travel to Merseyside to face the also struggling Everton in a relegation 6-pointer. Tensions will be high in this clash as both teams are in the relegation zone. And yeah, it's going to be a very high tension, very sort of leggy game, I think, as it was when Southampton faced Forest last week. I do think that despite Everton's season not going great, they still have some good quality throughout their squad, and I can see them giving Southampton a good game at Goodison. Both sides are in desperate need of the points to avoid the dreaded drop, and Everton are probably in the most trouble out of the two, as their finances aren't looking great either, as well as having the new stadium built. So I'd argue that Everton need these 3 points more than Southampton, and I think they'll get it. I think it's going to be 2-0 to Everton. I think Everton are the better side in this clash, and there's not really many sides you could say that about. Southampton are really struggling under their new manager, who appears to be a bit out of his depth in the Premier League. However, Southampton have managed to sign Mislav Orsic, but I don't think he'll be able to save Southampton on his own. So for this one, I'm backing Everton. They look like the better side at the moment. And then move on to Brentford versus Bournemouth. Bournemouth continue their slide down the table as they travel to London to face the Bees. Brentford currently occupy 9th and have been putting some really impressive performances against sides that look better than them on paper. Bournemouth, on the other hand, do not look great. They had a bright start to the season, but have been slowly sliding down the table. Both sides are nursing injuries, to be fair, but Bournemouth are currently looking worse off with a player out through suspension as well. I think it's pretty clear who will win this clash, as Brentford are performing well as of late, and will have started well after the international break too. Bournemouth, they've been floundering at the moment. I'm going to say 3-0 to Brentford. I can't really see Bournemouth getting anything from this clash, especially in the Brentford Community Stadium. This is even without Tony, who I believe is still injured for Brentford, but we've seen that they can score goals. Bournemouth aren't lacking in goals, but they've failed to score in the last 4 league matches, so it's not really looking good for them at the moment. And it's looking like they could slide into the relegation zone if they fail to gain any points here, which I think they will do. It's not looking good for them. Then we move on to Sunday's clashes, and we've got Chelsea versus Crystal Palace. Another London derby follows this week, and it will see the Eagles travel to Stamford Bridge. Now normally you'd assume Chelsea would win this match, but with the way current results have been going, it's pretty up in the air. Both sides haven't been in the best form they'd like to be this season, with Chelsea especially underperforming quite a bit. It's a tough match to call as Palace haven't been great in front of goal recently, whereas this Chelsea side are really struggling to break down opponents and keep on top of them. So I'm going to say it's going to be a 1-1 draw. I'm backing a draw here. Both sides are looking pretty similar at the moment, which is quite surprising to consider when you look at this Chelsea side and the quality they possess. I do think both sides will score, but ultimately they'll end up sharing the spoils in London. I do understand that the Chelsea board are backing Potter, but I don't know how much longer the fans will put up with it. Personally, I think you give him time, just like Arteta, he will come good, but he just needs a bit more time to work his magic on this Chelsea side. Give him a full transfer window and see what he can do. Then move on to Newcastle United versus Fulham. Now Newcastle, they did really well to earn a point against Arsenal last week, despite some really questionable officiating, and they'll be welcoming this London side to St James's Park. Newcastle have been really solid defensively this season, and will be looking to shut out Fulham, and specifically their top goal scorer Mitrovic. Fulham are working at cementing themselves as a Premier League team, and so far they've done a good job. I personally think they will do it. Newcastle currently sit third, just above United by a goal difference, so they're going to be hoping to see United drop points to City and Palace this week, and hopefully score a couple goals against Fulham in the process. I think they will. I think it's going to be 3-1. I think Newcastle will be able to keep out Fulham for the most part. It'll probably be that man Mitrovic who scores, but Newcastle are a very strong side, especially at home, and their defensive record is very good this season. I can see the home atmosphere being a very good advantage for Newcastle, and I'm sure they'll use it to good effect against the Cottagers. Now move on to Tottenham Hotspur versus Arsenal. Now this is a brilliant clash as we close out Sunday with a tasty North London derby, which will be huge for both teams involved. This will be huge for Tottenham's top 4 hopes, as well as Arsenal's spot at the top of the table. Should they drop points to Spurs in this clash, it will make City's job of catching up a lot easier. Tensions will be high for this match, and I'm hoping it's a good clash. It should be. The North London derby always provides some entertaining moments, so I'm looking forward to it. Despite Arsenal topping the table and Spurs sitting 5th, this clash really could go either way. Arsenal are definitely the stronger side at the moment, but Spurs look to be making a resurgent push up the table in a bid to qualify for the Champions League this season. Spurs will make it easy for the visitors, but I just think the North London rivals are too strong for them at the moment. I'm going to say 3-2 to Arsenal. I can see it being a close fought match with tensions being so high for what is a very important North London derby for both sides. I can't see Arsenal dropping out of the top 4 this season. They'll probably go all the way and win the league if we're being honest, but Spurs really need to get something out of this match if they want to qualify for the Champions League. And then move on to one of the rearranged fixtures. This is a Wednesday night clash between Crystal Palace and Manchester United. Another important clash for United's top 4 hopes, as it's their game in hand over Newcastle. The Red Devils travel to Selhurst Park in some great form at the moment and could be riding high if the Manchester Derby goes their way. Palace could also be riding high if they see off Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, which I doubt. Palace have been struggling recently, finding it hard to score goals, whereas United don't have that issue as they've scored 7 goals in their last 3 games. And I think they'll score another 3 here. I'm going to say 3-1 to United. I think the United will win this match and quite comfortably. They've been on a really good run in the league and cup competitions this season. I can't really see Palace putting a stop to that. Palace will probably nick a goal with the match being played at Selhurst Park, but United shouldn't be too troubled otherwise. And our final clash this week sees Manchester City host Tottenham Hotspur. This is another big match for City as they need to catch up on Arsenal's lead if they want to retain their title, whereas Spurs will want to push for that top 4 spot. Man City are a really strong squad with some really good players, and they'll definitely cause Spurs a lot of problems. Spurs do have quality within their side too, but I think that's overshadowed by this City side. I can't really see Spurs getting much out of this clash, as we've seen them fail to beat sides that aren't as good as City this season. I'm going to say 3-1 to City. It will be a really tough match for Spurs, there's no doubt about that, and if they lose this and the North London Derby, their European hopes could slip away from them. City are prolific goal scorers, as we know, and have many players who can score goals alongside that man Haaland, which will cause Tottenham a lot of problems. I'm sure Harry Kane will grab a goal against City, the team that wanted to sign him last season, but it's not going to be enough to rescue any points for Tottenham Hotspur, I don't think. So yeah, those have been my Game Week 20 Premier League predictions. We got some really tasty clashes this week, so I'm looking forward to them. A lot of derbies as well. They always make for good viewing. I'm especially excited for that East Midlands Derby, as I will be there cheering on my boys in red to hopefully batter the Foxes. But yeah, I've been O2GT. I'd love to hear your predictions in the comments below. Again, I might not reply, but I've definitely seen the comment. So thank you if you've been commenting them. I know a few people have. And yeah, I shall see you guys in the next video. Peace.